All right. Well, thank you everyone for logging in and checking in with us today for our webinar sponsored by the Fox Cities Employee-Friendly Workplace Initiative here at the Fox Cities Chamber. We got a few more people trickling in, but in the interest of time, we're going to try to get things rolling on time to make sure we have enough time for our presenters here. My name is Eric Broughton. I'm the Director of Business Retention and Expansion here at the Chamber. And one of my roles is to help out with and run our employee-friendly workplace initiative. And through that initiative, for those of you who aren't aware, we actually go out and certify employers in our region as employee-friendly. Fox Cities has been nationally recognized as a great place to live for quite a while. And we also are trying to bring that attention to us as far as being a great place to work also. So this program was founded back at the end of 2019, and we certify employers in 4 different categories and rate them in paid leave and flexible work schedules, financial support, health and wellness support, and perks. And then we give them a rating of either bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So like I said, back in 2019, when this started, we had a couple companies get certified right away. Those were, and this next slide here, Werner Electric and Jewelers Mutual. So they came on right away. Then we had the pandemic and COVID hit. And when that happened, priorities changed for companies and things with the program really kind of slowed down quite a bit. But I'm happy to say that this summer, when things started to kind of open up again and people felt more comfortable, we really are starting to gain a lot of traction. We have certified 3 new employers in the last 2 months, and we have a 6th, I should say, to add to our total, certified that we just haven't announced yet, and that's probably coming next month. So a lot of good things are happening. It brings attention to the Fox Cities, and also the employers can use this. It's a great tool to use when you're going out and recruiting talent. So I'll share some more information on this at the end. If anyone is interested and wants to learn more, we'll have some details for you later. We've got 3 really great panelists here for you today, speaking on kind of some different topics here, but all related to workforce. Julie Keller, the Executive Director for the Women's Fund of the Fox Valley. Tami McLaughlin, the Director of World Relief Fox Valley. And Bill Fotsch, the founder and head coach of Open Book Coaching. So really great speakers, some diverse topics they're going to cover. You guys are going to learn a lot, but we're going to try to breeze through a couple of quick things first so that we can get through our presentation and give them as much time as we can here. I want to thank our sponsors. Through this initiative, the employee-friendly workplace, like I mentioned, Werner Electric and Jewelers Mutual have been partners right from the start on this, as has United Way, the Child Care Resource and Referral, and First 5 Fox Valley. So thank you all for your continued support on this. We couldn't do this kind of programming without you guys. So one of the things we do as part of this initiative is we actually put out a benefits survey every year. And what that does is it allows employers to see how they compare with people in our region specifically. There's always kind of these surveys out there that might be on a national level or statewide, but this really breaks it down to something regional. So you really know how your benefits that you're offering are stacking up against your partners or your competitors down the road. We have this survey. There's a couple slides I'm going to kind of breeze through because this is all going to be available on our website. And again, in the interest of time, I want to leave our panelists as much time as we can. But some of the things we cover, we obviously want to give you a breakdown of who's participating in the survey, what people's benefits perceptions are, and how generous they feel their employers are being. We cover things like paid time off. You can see how your company breaks down there. Parental leave, obviously, is a big topic. Employee friendly, kind of like what we're talking about here. We break down some of the things that people and employers are doing that are kind of outside the box to take care of their employees. Medical insurance. It's always a big topic again. Covers what percentages most employers around our area are paying as far as premiums. Healthcare, I think this is probably something Julie's going to cover here in a little bit, but this is obviously a big factor, and we've got some questions in the survey about that as well, and how employers are helping to pay for that. Also covered as one of the ratings that we cover in our employee-friendly workplace ratings, work-life balance, again, is becoming hugely popular, even more so with the pandemic and people working from home. So we cover a number of different topics here. Again, sorry to breeze through that, but again, this will all be available through a link that I'll send you guys through the chat here. I'll put that up in a little bit. One last thing I want to mention before we get going. We want to mention our next round of programming that we are partnering up with Fox Valley Tech to offer a couple of different sessions around hiring winning talent. Session 1 is going to be Wednesday, December 1st. That's specifically is covering attraction and recruitment. And that's going to be located on site at the Bordini Center. Session 2 is going to be on retention, and that's going to be Tuesday, February 1st. So take a look on our website for that. You can register if you're interested, but those are some things upcoming. So save those dates. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our panelists, and we are going to kick things off with Julie Keller from the Women's Fund Fox Valley.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's just start from the beginning. There we go. So the Women's Fund, thank you for inviting me and the Women's Fund to speak, Eric. So the mission of the Women's Fund is really to promote the advancement of women and girls in our community. And we really want to see a community where, can you see my cheat sheet on the other side here?
Yes, we can, Julie. You'll have to start the slideshow there.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Technical difficulties, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Home, okay, view, normal, no notes, okay.
While Julie's checking into this, I'll just mention too, we are recording this for any one of your coworkers that may not see this. And also all these presentations are going to be sent out to anyone that's on the call today too. But,
Okay. From the beginning. Sorry about this.
that's okay. Julie, did you want us to try to pull it up on our end and see if we can get it, or you want to keep trying?
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
From beginning. Well, I don't know why it's not doing the whole screen, but okay, well, you'll get to see what's coming up next. So as I said, it's really the community of equality where power and opportunity are not limited by gender. And we do that work through grants, programming, education and advocacy, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute here. So the focus areas, how we do this work is we really look at what are those needs, unique needs for women and girls in the Fox Valley. And so we have different focus areas, and everything that we do, whether it's in the grants, advocacy, education, programming area, fall into these different focus areas. And it's safety, health, and well-being, education, economic security, and leadership opportunities. So when we look at what work the Women's Fund wants to do and the impact we want to have for women and girls in the community, we really look at these for focus areas. And we also do research, which I'll get into a little bit as well, regarding what those needs are in the community and how the Women's Fund can be really a collaborator and a convener for change for women and girls. And as I said, we do that work through grants. So we give out money to nonprofit organizations to do the important work of supporting women and girls in our community. We do programming work. We have a great collaboration with Fox Valley Tech and Babes to help single moms go back to school, as just one example of a program that we support in that way. Education, things like this. So we want to get out into the community and let everyone know about the status of women and girls and how they can help and support women and girls in our community. And then advocacy. And advocacy is really all about how can we use our voice to have greater change. We know that philanthropic dollars alone cannot solve a lot of the issues that the charitable community is called upon to help solve. And we know that advocacy is a really important way that we can address some of those issues as well. And childcare is one of those advocacy type issues that the Women's Fund has recently been involved in. So when we do research, we do a status of women in Northeast Wisconsin report, and we collaborate with the Women's Funds in Green Bay, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, and then our Women's Fund here in the Fox Valley region. And we do a status of women report every 5 years, and we're due for another one in 2022. But we came together and said, COVID has had such a huge impact on women that we really wanted to do something related to COVID. And we heard all of the national statistics about it and all of the studies and the that information. And we really wanted to drill down and say, what is happening here in Northeast Wisconsin? So the Women's Funds collaborated with St. Norbert's College, their survey center there. And we did a survey 1 year into the COVID pandemic. So our survey was open from March through for about 8 weeks or so. And so we really wanted to survey women in Northeast Wisconsin who were impacted by COVID. And we had the survey open, as I said, for about 4 to 6 weeks. We got over 1,000 results. So St. Norbert's College Survey Center was thrilled for us that we got that many surveys back. And it really provided us with some really rich data. You will be able to see the full report on our website, and we'll make sure Eric and the chamber have the link so they can share all of that with you. It's a very detailed report. We asked everything from job security to working from home to virtual schooling for the kids to their childcare to even issues of stress, mental health, and domestic violence. So we know that all of those are factors for women during this time. So we really got a great response and rich data that we were able to use and share with our community. And the point of this is not just we do this and then we put it on a shelf, but we want to share it with the community and so we can act together on how we can better support women during this time. So that data is out there. There's also a dashboard, so you can drill down. You can look by county, so you can see in Outagamie County, Winnebago County, whatever county you happen to be in, Brown County. So you can search by county. You can do some ages, income levels, things like that. So there's a dashboard that you can really drill down and see. So what we know locally.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Someone has asked that the slides, they're not changing. I don't know if you were meaning to be on the mission screen still, or
no. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay.
Let's see. Stop. Okay. Share. Can you see it changing?
Yes, we can.
You can. Okay. So mission, focus areas. This is the graphic of everything that we do that I talked about. And then we were on the COVID. So you can see this slide about the COVID impact on women in Northeast Wisconsin.
Yes, that's where we are.
Perfect. Great. And now, so here's some stats on what we know locally for that came out of the survey. So 50% of women aged 18 to 34 reported a lack of childcare, had a moderate significant impact on their employment. So we've heard a lot about childcare, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. 65% of women with children at home said mom provided the primary care during the pandemic. Working women with children experienced increased rates of poor mental health and stress. And more than 70% of children in the home had moderate or major mental health issues, and 80% increase in daily stress. And I think this last point is really important, is most do not expect the stress level to decline to pre-pandemic levels. So this is something that, as we're coming out, hopefully, of COVID and into this new environment, that there still will be a lot of stress on women as they are balancing working with their children, because it is still women who primarily provide the care in the home for their families, and they are doing that at a time when they are also trying to balance increased demands in the workplace as well. So I advance my slide again. Hopefully you can see that, what we know nationally. So a lot of the information we found locally was also what we were hearing about nationally. So we know women lost jobs at a tremendous rate. The she session, I'm sure we all heard that terms multiple times, and everybody from the Wall Street Journal to the Federal Reserve Chairman to other publications have cited that. So women make up 39% of the global workforce, and they account for 54% of overall job losses. So we know that women were on the front lines. A lot of the women in the sectors that were shut down, such as retail, tourism, that consumer-facing businesses, those are majority of women businesses. Women work at those types of businesses, so we know that women definitely got hit with a lot of those job disruptions. So women shouldered the majority of the childcare and household responsibilities. That was as well on the national level. We saw that, and this inadequate childcare system was front and center. And women voluntarily, and you see I put voluntarily in quotes, left the workforce. Some women didn't feel like it was voluntary. They felt like they had to make a choice, and they were privileged enough to be able to make that choice to step away from the workforce, but it wasn't maybe a choice that they would want to make, to step away for their workforce, but they just felt that with the that with all of the responsibilities, they just couldn't do both. I thought it was interesting stat. The first major drop off from women in the workforce was in September of 2020. And that was 863,000 women left the workforce. The next largest drop off, September of 2021, when 309,000 women left the workforce. So what happens in September? Kids go back to school. So now women are trying to figure that out. And so a lot of them voluntarily left the workforce. Change my slide again. Eric, just let me know if you don't see the changes. So childcare, the silence has been broken. I thought that was a great quote by somebody as I was putting this together. Silence has been broken. People who work in the childcare industry, people who use the childcare know that it's a broken system. It's very expensive. It's often the highest, if you have more than one children, or the second highest cost in your household after your mortgage. So families are paying basically 2 mortgages for a lot of the years when their children are in child care. And moms, again, spent a lot of time trying to balance that with their children at home. Different stats, we saying it's equivalent of a full-time job. They spend 3/4 of their time working with children. And it is the moms, and that's just reality. So nothing against the dads out there who are doing a lot of good hard work too, but it's the moms who primarily are interrupted and get the calls and have to kind of be on the front lines of childcare and virtual schooling. And I thought it was interesting too that the loss of childcare drove out college educated bachelor degree women. And those are the women, if you think about it, who are probably working from home. So they have the flexibility, they have those jobs that they are able to work from home, but still they couldn't make it work. because again, of all of the, especially if you have younger children, of all of the things that your younger children need, especially when schools were totally virtual. So things are getting better, right? Well, McKinsey and Company does a wonderful study of women in the workplace every year, and actually their 2021 study just came out within the past couple of weeks, and they found that women are even more burnt out today than they were a year ago. Which, if you think about it, we should be feeling better, right? We were coming out of this, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but still women after a year, 18 months of juggling this are just burnt out. So I think that's really important for employers to know and to consider, that it's not all going to be easy sailing from here, because we are, hopefully coming out of this. So women are still downshifting their careers. They're still thinking about different things they want to do. They may be moving to part-time work, thinking they don't want to or can't do full-time work. So I think that that's really an important thing for all of us to remember, is that things aren't necessarily better. And some of the things the McKinsey study reported is women at work are really taking on those caregiving responsibilities at work, those kind of unrecognized things that we all need for a great culture at work. They're taking care of team members. They're making sure their team isn't burnt out. They're doing a lot of those types of things. I also thought it was interesting that they also cited DEI work. So women are leaders and the champions in the DEI work. So which, as we know, is more important than ever. And women are really championing a lot of those initiatives at their workforce. And is that being valued and compensated? So I think that's a challenge for all of us as we think about the increased workload that we may be putting on women. And also really just the blurred lines, right? It's you're working from home, you're stopping to make dinner and then going back, to your computer or you're, helping your kids and then going back to your computer. So it's really blurred lines. So I think as employers, we need to have really clear expectations, because it's hard when your office is in your dining room, it's hard to walk away from the office. So I think that is also contributing to the kind of 24/7 nature of work when we are working from home. So with this burnout, we're really at risk of losing more women, just at a time when we need them the most. We need their leadership in our businesses the most. So I think we all need to be aware of that. But it's not too late. So that's the hopeful news. I thought this was a great study by MetLife, and they specifically looked at women in STEM. But I thought it was interesting that 2/3 of those that they surveyed who did leave the workforce are ready to return. So some women have left the workforce for a period of time, and they're looking at come back. They want to come back. And I thought it was interesting to the factors that would encourage them to come back. They're not going to come back to what they had before. So hopefully we are all aware of that and can look at things differently. So these are the things that were cited in that particular study as what would encourage women to return or to pursue a career in this field. And it was really about diversity, equity, inclusion, benefits that fit their needs. And I think that's really important, benefits that fit a particular person's needs, more flexible work arrangements, of course, dedicated trainings, paid internships, and employee resource groups as well. So I know a lot of companies have women's employee resource groups, and I think that's a great way to have women be able to network within your organization, and that will definitely help with the retention. So my next slide here, what employers can do. So we know and Eric alluded to some of this in the introduction, we know the kind of typical or more typical than not kind of benefits. So, and I would look at caregiving benefits and also remember that we also have employees who are caring for elderly parents. So some of us are in the generation where we have kids at home and we have elderly parents that we are also trying to help through health concerns and things like that. So when I say caregiving benefits, think about all of the caregiving responsibilities that families have, not just young children. There may be other needs that they have. So as you're looking at your benefits and paid time off and family leave and things like that. Think about that too. And child care reimbursement is huge. As I said, it's just such a large piece of what families have to pay. And a lot of times families that are able to, it just doesn't make sense for one of the parents to work, simply because it just doesn't make economic sense with the cost of childcare. So that childcare is critical and important to attract and retain young families, including women. Consider a returnship program. That's not something I hear talked about a lot. I have a colleague who's very passionate about that. Women often step out of the workforce and they will dramatically reduce their salary when they come back. And they're facing a different salary path when they come back as well, because if they have to leave and then come back at a lower salary level, that just may not make any sense for them to even consider coming back. So how can you get women back at the level that they should be back at the pay they deserve? They maybe have been out of the workforce for 2 years, 5 years taking care of kids, but they are highly educated people that don't deserve to come back, like as starting over again. So I think a lot of women face that, I have to start over again. I have to start at the bottom. And that is not going to attract a lot of women that you want to come back if they have left for whatever reasons. So I would encourage looking at returnship types of programs. A lot of larger companies have something out there that you may want to take a look at. So non-traditional work arrangements, work share, shift time scheduling, I think this is really a time to reimagine work, right? This is what we're doing. Working 9 to 5 may not work for everybody. Maybe working 7 to 3 so they can pick up their kids, or maybe they want to work later so they can drop off their kids in the morning, or share a job, work share jobs, just really being open to how we get our work done. I think the pandemic proved that dedicated employees get the work done and then more. And so let's be creative in thinking about how we are arranging work that could meet the needs of women who have increased responsibilities at home. Clear about communicating boundaries, that goes back to the 24/7 nature of our work. And being clear as to what's work, and when you are not on the clock, I'll say. And recognize and reward the unrecognized work. So women are doing, like I said, a lot of that caregiving they're doing in the workplace, and it's not being recognized or compensated. They're really at the forefront of culture shifts and DEI work. So be sure that that is recognized and compensated, and really support your employees' well-being. Everybody's busy, but taking that time could mean a big difference between losing a very, very valuable employee if you ask about her well-being. And really, when we invest in women and girls, we're investing in the people who invest in everyone else. I love this quote by Melinda Gates because it's so true. Women invest in everyone else, and we need to make sure we are investing in women and girls and retaining them or getting them back into the workforce at a time when it's so critically important, and everybody needs employees. If you want to talk more, here's my contact information. Eric will be sending that out as well. So I look forward to talking more about this. If you want to know more about the study or ideas you have, just please reach out and contact me, and I'd love to have a conversation. So that's what I have for you today.
Julie, did you want to show your video quick? We do.
No, given the technical difficulties, I'm afraid.
All right. Sounds good.
There is a short video we did put together that's really very powerful about the COVID study. And so that is on our website as well. So I will have a link to everybody for that as well. So it's about 3 minutes, so it won't take much of your time at all, but it's very impactful about the highlights of the study. So.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll make sure to get that link out for you. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Tammy from World Relief.
Let's see. Hello, everybody. We are going to really change gears here, and we're going to talk about Afghan evacuees in the Fox Valley and how your businesses could help. But I'm Tami McLaughlin, Director of World Relief Fox Valley. I'm going to give you a broad overview of our agency, as I believe it will help to understand how we even got to this space of welcoming Afghan evacuees to our community. Let's see here. Oops, I'm not advancing. Here. I guess I'm having technical difficulties too. There we go. World Relief Fox Valley, or World Relief, is one of 9 national resettlement organizations who contract with the Department of State to resettle refugees. Our affiliate office in the Fox Valley opened in 2012, and we've resettled over 1,100 refugees in the past 9 years. We've placed them mainly in Oshkosh and Appleton, and some in Menasha also. Our initial programming stems from our refugee resettlement contract with the Department of State. It's our initial case management services. And this contract details the required services within the first 90 days of arrival. But our office also extends additional case management, extended and intensive, for those who face additional barriers. We help refugees navigate their initial medical needs and appointments. We provide education, which includes teaching clients about their new communities in areas of health, culture, and finance. We offer employment services, including job placement and job development. And our office also offers immigration legal services. We assist refugees with green cards, with citizenship, and other types of legal processes. So let's move on to August 2021. The events in Afghanistan, and specifically the Taliban takeover on August 15th of Kabul, produced a massive evacuation of people who would be at risk if they stayed in Afghanistan. Most, if not all, of these Afghans had some type of affiliation with the United States. These Afghans were evacuated to lily pads in Europe. There, every person received biometric and biographical screening. If they passed that screening, then they were interviewed. They went through an interview process. And if they passed the interview process, then they were admitted to the United States with a status of humanitarian parole, and they were flown to one of 8 military bases in the United States called safe havens. If you are interested in learning more about that security process, go to Homeland Security, and there's a fact sheet on Operation Allies Welcome, and it's really well detailed. The humanitarian parole status is a temporary status granted in emergency situations. And as you can see from this chart, evacuations and humanitarian parolees are not foreign to our country. The most recent mission out of Afghanistan and subsequent coordinated effort amongst our government agencies to support the Afghan resettlement is called Operation Allies Refuge. They also call it Operation Allies Welcome. On a call last week with the Department of Homeland Security, we were told that an estimated 55,000 evacuees were flown to the 8 military bases, with another 15 to 20,000 on their way. They also said that numbers do change, and that's been really reflective of the season that we're in. We hold all the information we receive loosely because things do change. We learn how to pivot, how to change positions, and just really do whatever is needed that's set forth right before us at that point in time. Can everybody see are we doing okay with that? With the screen?
Yeah, we can see everything, Tammy.
Okay. The Afghan, so this leads us to the Afghan Placement and Assistance Program, the APA. The resettlement agencies who contract with the Department of State to welcome refugees were also asked to welcome the evacuees under this program. And we're asked to administer the services in the program, which are almost replicate the services that we are required to perform for refugees when they are welcome to our communities. Some of the services are highlighted here, and I'm not going to go through every one. And again, this is the first 90 days of arrival, but do notice in italics, enrollment and employment services is one of the requirements of the contract. So how does the APA program, how is it being administered in the Fox Valley? Well, the first ask from the Department of State to all the refugee resettlement agencies, will you be involved in the APA program, and how many evacuees will you receive? World Relief Fox Valley proposed that we would receive 100 Afghan evacuees. Well, the government came back to all the settlement agencies a second time and asked us to reconsider our proposed numbers. There was a shortfall between what the resettlement agencies were proposing to receive versus the number of evacuees that were on the bases. We at World Relief Fox Valley, we reevaluated our numbers, had a lot of discussions. We also consulted with our state refugee coordinator, who is very, very supportive and involved in our statewide resettlement effort. And we determined that we could receive up to 200. So we basically doubled our numbers. It's my understanding that all the agencies in Wisconsin doubled their initial numbers, and Wisconsin as a state will welcome I believe it's 850 evacuees. We were initially told that this resettlement would occur through the end of next year. So we were expecting to welcome 200 people between a month ago and the end of 2022. But now we're learning that the bases want to expedite the removal of the evacuees. So we are expecting an uptick in arrivals. And from what we're learning, they're hoping by mid-February, all of the evacuees will be placed. As of last night, we've had 6 cases arrive representing 21 people. Each case has been unique in size. We welcomed a single man and we welcomed up to a family of 8 and every configuration in between. They're different in where they've come from. We've only had 1 case come from Fort McCoy. I think most Wisconsinites assume that all of our cases would be coming from Fort McCoy, and that hasn't held true. They all have different levels of English skills. They all have different work experience levels. So what is common among them is that they've all been evacuated from Afghanistan, and this group all speaks Dari, which is one of the most prominent languages in Afghanistan. We've prioritized housing in Appleton and Menasha, as we have a small established Afghan community here in Appleton, most of whom we resettled over 4 years ago. These community members are assisting us with interpretation, which is really helpful, but as much as they can. They're very busy, they work full time, they have families, some of them are going to school. So they help when they can with interpretation. But more important than that language ability is just the shared experience that they have and that they can relate to with the new Afghans coming into the community. It's something that we as Americans hopefully never will have to relate to. And it's really been uplifting to the newcomers that they have somebody who can welcome them, again, with that shared experience of country, language, and just all the events in Afghanistan. With our rapid resettlement numbers and we're in a housing shortage, the whole country is. We're not sure if we'll continue the trend of placing people in Appleton and Menasha, but Oshkosh is equally as networked and strong. We place a lot of refugees in Oshkosh also. Just it was the initial pull for Appleton was the community that was already, the established Afghan community that was already here. So what is World Relief's role in employment services? We normally, when refugees arrive, we assist with Social Security and EAD applications. And I'm sure most of you know EADs are employment authorization documentations. They're administered by the USCIS, or United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and EADs allow foreign nationals to work. So that's one of our first steps within the first week of arrival is to apply for those two statuses, but the evacuees have been applying for those on the bases, and actually a few have already received them. We also perform employability assessments, and we create an employability plan with each employable adult on the caseload. The purpose of this plan is to help each client prepare and develop realistic and appropriate goals for employment. It also helps us determine if all employable adults in the case or in the household will work. This may be especially relevant for the Afghan families, as the general assumption and trend is that women will most likely not want to work. This will give the male heads of household more options, possibly with shifts, and there's no need to worry about childcare if somebody needs to be home when children are home, but it will certainly have an effect on their income. And in many of our refugee families, both adults are required to work because of financial reasons. So we will help, just navigate those types of discussions and goals in the end. Often, if a family also has young adult children, maybe 18 to 21, those children always want to go on to school. Education is really their primary goal, but sometimes they have to start working to contribute to the family income. So again, a lot of those conversations are just really diagnosing what the total family unit is, what their needs, what their requirements, what their priorities are, and see how we can help make those happen. Other information that we take into consideration as we talk about employment is what type of job. Is there medical history, English level, religious practices? Sometimes those considerations have an impact on the type of employment we're seeking. World Relief also provides employment services because if they're enrolled in our employment program, they have to adhere to certain requirements to qualify for benefits. When refugees and Afghan evacuees arrive, we enroll them in benefits, W-2 for those with families, food share, Badger Care, those types of benefits. And those benefits really help them land well, help them stabilize in our bridge before they get employment. Those benefits will change once they get benefits or once they get employed. But they have to adhere to our program requirements to receive those benefits and to maintain those benefits. So those program requirements include attending activities like employment readiness, job clubs, resume writing workshops, job fairs, in addition to making sure they're attending all of our orientations, the health screenings that we offer. They have to be enrolled and attend English classes until they're employed. So there's a number of things that they can adhere to, but also really helps them, again, prepare for employment and longevity and self-sustaining. We rarely begin with job placements earlier than 3 months of an arrival. It really takes time to accomplish all the other requirements that we are required to perform in those first 90 days. And when they start working, we want them to be devoted to work, not to have to take off work because of a health appointment or in another enrollment or registration. Now, sometimes people get anxious. They want to work and we want them to work, but we really encourage them to attempt to wait, because we want to make sure that the other requirements are attended to prior to employment. And we want to help them to make a placement, a good placement, which can take a little more time. We have had people who've arrived and they've had family members who've arrived before them, and we'll take them to work and get them started at the jobs that they're working at, the family members, and then find out, oh, maybe that wasn't a good placement because of all the elements that we really want to consider before employment. So again, we really encourage people to wait and say, hey, let us help you and make sure that we make a good placement for you. Eventually, we will present and discuss what their employment options are. And again, this is based on assessments and employer options. Often those first placements can be difficult, especially we have some clients who are well educated, who are very skilled, who had good jobs in their country, and they're just not able to enter employment at the same level. Oftentimes there will be other options for them later, but often that first job is not what they had hoped for, or not what they had done in their previous country. Often there's grief and disappointment that accompany these realizations. But again, it's something we often tell our clients, your first job is not where you'll stay. Oftentimes you have to look back and realize how far you've come. Let's just get this first one and get some experience, and then we can work on next tiered employment. It's important to note we don't make decisions for our clients. We present options. We make recommendations, but it is their right to accept or decline. And it's the same for employers. We may make referrals of employees to an employer, and they have the right to accept or decline. We've always had tremendous support from Fox Valley employers. Much of that is due to we've been here for over 9 years. Refugees have a good reputation as employees. They pass drug tests. They're loyal and hardworking. They want to do well. And often they will work in jobs that many Americans don't want. And again, that's not to say they're going to stay there, but often that entry-level position is what many of our newcomers are securing for first employment. Even with that tremendous support from Fox Valley employers, the Afghan situation brought an even greater response from employers all across the state. So while we determined to respond to that it was best for us to create a list of questions for each employer to answer, and then we will rank the employers just by the potential best fits. So some of the employer considerations that we are evaluating is number of hires. Often it's beneficial to place several people at a company at the same time, especially if one of the employers has English skills. If one of the employees has English skills, then they can assist with training, with interpretation. So that's a real benefit. Also, it helps more your morale and job satisfaction when you're working with others who you have a lot in common. We consider hours and schedules. Some clients do want to go to work or go to school and are willing to do so, in the evening. Some have another member of their household working. There's a lot of reasons and factors to consider as we determine what hours and schedules will be most beneficial for individual clients. Obviously, wage is a big consideration, including healthcare, overtime, hours in a day, those types of things. Types of work and skills are required. We want employees to be able to do the job. So we really want to take, consider the type of work. Is it heavy lifting? Do you have to have some type of English skill? Do you have to have some type of experience? Those are also big considerations when we're making placement. Transportation is a big consideration at the start. People won't have driver's license. So we have to know bus routes and bus schedules as they relate to the work location and shift times. Some companies are now offering transportation, which is a really big bonus, but many are not. So again, that's a consideration we need to look at. And then just additional supports, very similar to the questions regarding the employer survey. Are employers willing to provide ELL classes on site? Will they invest in culture training? Often we find that owners and managers are willing to hire diverse populations, but maybe the frontline staff might not have bought into this as much. And this can really be a problem for everybody, for the whole environment. We ask if there's upward mobility potential. As I mentioned, some people will stay in that first job for a long time, but most won't. And we often tell people that, and we want to be able to offer companies that might have that upward mobility potential. So again, we have all of these considerations that we've been asking employers, and we have ranked them and charted them. And as we start placing people in jobs, we'll start looking at their assessments. We haven't begun our Afghan assessments yet, but we'll look at the assessments and then look at the employers who've responded and are interested in hiring some of the Afghan evacuees and refugees. We still have refugees that we work with. Let's see here. So what does a placement look like? Well, the placement will require time and investment from an employer. Our business systems are complicated. Time clocks, payrolls, automatic deposits, signing up for benefits is difficult. Employers must really make a commitment that they want to make this work and be willing to invest in the new employers. So that's a huge, that, like I mentioned too, just about the managers and owners buying into this, but the whole organization really needs to buy into this. It really should be the culture of the organization that they're willing to welcome new people and diverse people to their work. It must be mutually beneficial, otherwise no one wins. And that's why we're trying really hard for those assessments and for the employment inventory to really balance and to match well for the benefit of everybody. And then, as I mentioned, these our evacuees, they've already been asking when they're going to start work. They're motivated to work. They're loyal and they want to do well. They want the same things that we want. They want to provide for their families. They want to thrive versus survive. And they want to be treated with dignity and respect. So, first and foremost, I think we need to treat everybody as a fellow human being and then as a prospective employee. And if we do that, and if that's the culture of the whole organization, I think it could be a win-win situation for all involved. So thank you for your time. Let's see here. If our website has a lot of information about all of the work we're doing, and you certainly can contact me at my email address if you would like more information or to further discuss. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate all that. And if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat and we will get back to you with the answers to that. So now I am going to hand it off to Bill.
Thanks, Melissa. And my compliments to Julie and the work she's done for women, and Tammy on behalf of Afghans. I'm humbled by the great work that they're doing. So I'm going to kind of bring things a little bit closer to home. I'm going to talk about incentive plans. There's kind of a lot of material that I could go through. I'm going to aim pretty high. This is a little bit of background. As you see, I was Briggs & Stratton engineer some time ago. The key thing, though, is you'll note this comment below. We help organizations improve their results and the lives of the employees that drive those results. I think you'll see when I'm talking about incentive plans that that's kind of pervasively the case. You'll get a copy of this presentation. We've written about 100 Forbes articles, 20 Inc. articles, about a half a dozen HBR articles. These are some of the ones that are more applicable. If my guess is everybody's running real hard, has lots to do. If you see the second article under incentive plan specifics, incentive plans that actually work, if you have time to read one article, it's a page and a half, that would be the article I would recommend of this group. What I'm going to go through today is what I've learned works in terms of incentive plan creation. And it's these 7 steps. And hopefully I'll be able to kind of buzz through this with fast enough that we'll have some time for questions. It starts with selecting the right group to incent. So you have to decide, who are we incenting? I'm going to go through each of these steps and talk about each one of them. First, as far as the right group to incent, I'm guessing most of the folks on the webinar today are from companies that are 500 employees or below. We're a big advocate of team-based incentives. Business tends to be a team sport. So if you're in operations and you delight a customer, you just made sales look good and made sales easier. It's a simple example of business being a team sport. At the same time, if the team is too large, it's hard for people to get their hands around this. So if you're in a company that is larger than 500 employees, thinking about ways you can break them down into individual components. It could be a department like we did with BHP Billiton. It could be branches like we did with Capital One. It could be, again, a department with Capital One. But it's really important that the size of the team is not so large that people can't have a sense of what effect that they're really having. Again, I won't spend much time on this because I'm guessing most of you are under 500 employees, therefore the team is likely your company. The next thing is develop with a focus on team involvement. Guys, if you wanted to take one takeaway from this, here's the takeaway. And that is, if your purpose is to influence behavior, then if you involve people in the development of the incentive plan, the likelihood even a relatively poor incentive plan will work is very high. People understand, they were involved, and the likelihood they're going to buy into it is very high. At the same time, if you develop an incentive plan with no member involvement, then the likelihood that they're going to understand, buy in, and really change their behavior as a function of the incentive plan is pretty low. And I mention that because most folks, in fact, have little to no team involvement in the incentive plan. When I say team involvement, I mean asking employees for their input. And it's not to ask them to design an incentive plan, but what do the employees see as the key issues facing the business that we might want to target an incentive plan on? And doing that in an anonymous way encourages candor. Doing the same thing with the managers, frankly, doing it with your customers. What do they see as the key things that your customers value? And then from this information, and maybe variances to budget, other components, figure out what exactly do you want to focus on? What do you want to drive? And frankly, it's the simpler, the better. So if you're an engineering company, a lot of people think go immediately to profit sharing. Well, if you understand that revenue per total paid hour as an example is something very easy for folks to understand and is the key driver to profitability, then that's a much better metric because it's simpler, easier for folks to understand. It may be job margin dollars in another setting. It will vary company to company. Once you've figured out what you want to focus your incentive on, the next thing is actually pretty straightforward, at least in a way, and that is an incentive plan is not a giveaway. It should be self-funded. What does that mean? Well, you've got a baseline of performance. If we don't perform above that baseline, we aren't creating any more wealth. So there's nothing to share. If you start performing above that baseline, you're starting to create wealth. And if you use like 5 to 25% of the incremental profits or cash that is being generated above that baseline, all of a sudden you have a very win-win scenario. Everybody in the company is cheering for higher bonuses, higher incentive pay, because higher incentive pay by definition means higher company performance. So the owners, the managers, the employees, everybody should be in favor and be directed towards higher levels of incentive. A next thing, and I understand we have a number of HR folks on the line, there's a whole variety of bonus or incentive payment details that are worthwhile to nail down. So things like who's actually covered, who's involved in the incentive plan. And we, again, would be big fans of pretty much everybody, at least in a smaller to mid-sized company. What would be the right payment frequency? We're big fans of annual incentive plans, but with payment opportunities quarterly. Part of the reason that that is the case is if you're doing something in February, it's pretty hard to get people all fired up about an incentive plan that they aren't going to see till the next January. It's a problem with incentive plans. And payment timing, typically, if you do a quarterly incentive plan, and by the way, that's quarterly on year-to-date results, so it's really an annual incentive plan just with payment opportunities along the way. But then explaining to folks, we don't get the final results ourselves for a couple weeks after the quarter is completed. So with that being the case, typically payments for the first quarter, for example, end up arriving like the end of the following month. So a first quarter of your fiscal year is March, but the payment won't actually be received till April. Next things are eligibility requirements. We're big fans of both full-time and part-time employees that are otherwise qualify. Temporary employees or contract workers typically don't qualify on incentive plans. You can vary that, but this is sort of mainstream. Time of service, what we found works well is sort of like the amount of time that an employee has to be there for other benefits. So like 3 months, before they're eligible to be part of the incentive plan. It doesn't exist in all companies, but if you have a disciplinary program and an employee is in a disciplinary review, one of the reasons that, or things that you can do to make a little more teeth to that, is explain if you're in a disciplinary situation, you're ineligible for the bonus payment for that particular period. Extended absences, again, you may vary from this, but typically if the extended absence is more than 3 weeks and a quarter, then in effect, the bonus gets pro rata, gets indexed down as a function of how much time you actually worked in a quarter. And the payment date is kind of a stupid, simple little thing, and that is explain to everybody that they need to be employed on the date in which the payment is made. I've actually seen companies that are trying to chase down employees that have already left because they think they owe them some incentive plan because they didn't have this particular attribute nailed down. Couple of additional things. Make sure that the incentive plan is understandable. This is a great way of getting the incentive plan turbocharged right off the bat. So if you explain, this is the focus of the incentive plan, here's how we track it, and then you ask every employee, as was done with this particular group, what's one thing that you individually can do in the next 30 to 60 days to help improve the results and improve the prospects for a bonus for you and everybody else? What you get is you get a real good understanding is, does everybody actually understand the incentive plan? And in addition, because they're actually already thinking about things they can do, the likelihood that you get a big lift in terms of improved performance right off the bat is very high. This is a little bit busy to show. By the way, you'll get all these slides, but this was just a list of all of the ideas that were submitted, the individual ideas for improvement. We categorized them. Some had to do with labor savings, some had to do with material saving, speed, and so forth. So this is in more of a manufacturing background. And then what we did was we said, okay, let's take quality as an example. What does quality mean? And they told me, well, it's the reduction of rework. I said, great. And there were 10 of you that said something about quality. Well, if we reduce the amount of rework, how much reduction on a typical job would we save? They said, well, our reduction in labor costs would drop by about 5%. So 13,000 would become 12,004. I said, great. If we reduce the rework, what would happen on a typical job in terms of material costs? They said, oh, geez, if we nick a valve or something like that, it can be real expensive, easily a couple percent though. I said, great, okay, so 56,000 becomes 55,000. Would anything change in terms of the revenue on the job? They said, well, no, if we're doing the job right the first time, no one's going to pay us more. But then somebody says, but Bill, we get 23 jobs out per month. If we weren't doing the rework and we've got a good backlog, we'd probably get an additional job out. So 23 would become 24. So all of a sudden they say, well, wait a minute, if the labor costs go down, material costs go down, therefore the job margin goes up. The job margin dollars per month, which was the performance metric for these guys, would go to $880,000 where it was $800,000. So if you will, quality improvements in terms of reduction of rework is worth $80,000 a month. We did this for each of the major categories. We eliminated things like speed because we realized we were double counting. It summed up to $360,000 a month times 4 months is $4 million. We said, well, we're probably not going to be able to realize any more than about half of that. But if we realize half of that, our bonus would jump from a few weeks to actually a few months. It's a great way of making things tangible right off of people's own ideas. Another aspect of this is tracking the progress that is being made. And this, frankly, at most companies, you want to do this on a weekly basis. This is updated. This is, the blue line is the prior year. That's budget. And you can see this particular company is soaring, as are the business results, as are the prospects for a bonus. And in this particular case, the bonus had gotten to as much as 732 hours for the year. Well, think about that for a second. 732 hours in a year, that's like 3 months of pay. Well, that's a big deal. But everybody can see this every step of the way. And that's frankly why it's not unusual for folks to reap really good incentive payments. And at the same time, the company's benefit is a multiple of that, because only a fraction of the dollars that are getting generated go to the incentive plan. So in summary, select the right group to incent, develop the focus with team involvement. Again, if I were to highlight one thing, it would be number 2. Be sure that the bonus or incentive plan that you're developing is self-funded. Define the bonus details, make sure it's understandable. Asking people for their thoughts is a great way of doing that. Learn and explore how to win on an ongoing basis, which really breathes life into the incentive plan, and track progress, forecast. And then the thing I added is each year it should get refined depending on what has occurred in the following year. I'm sure at some level that was like sipping from a fire hose, but maybe we've got a little bit of time for questions if anybody has any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Eric.
All right, thanks, Bill. Julie and Tammy, thank you guys as well. I currently don't see, we do have a few extra minutes here. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'm just checking. But I do have a couple of questions that I had for you guys. So going back to Julie, as what's one of the things, I know the whole goal is to bring women back to the workforce. That's kind of the thing we're looking at here. What is the number one thing that you think employers could start doing today to help attract more women to the workforce? And then once they're there, how do they keep them there? What's the incentives they need to work on?
Definitely the flexibility, I think. And I just don't mean flexibility in working from home. I mean flexibility in scheduling as well. Shift, even if it's kind of shift work, is there different ways to do that type of a scheduling? I know that's probably easier said than done, but I think just being really creative in what that looks like in terms of a schedule and working with people individually about what will work for their families.
Great.
And keeping them there, I think, keeping that flexibility. I think looking at, childcare, obviously for women who with younger children is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. And Tammy, I thought your comments were interesting about, the women staying home. So childcare is covered. That's a real concern. And so I think that's really important as well. And just realizing if you have women who can work remotely, that their work day may look very different. Part of the survey was that a lot of women completed their 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, whatever, on the nights and on the weekends. And, they could come in, after 8 o'clock when the kids were in bed or whatever. So just be open to the fact that women can get work done if they need to outside of a traditional 8 to 5 kind of a time frame, and be okay with that. you know, as long as the job is getting done, and it's being done well, you know, I think we can look past some of these things where we think we need people in the office at certain times.
Great, thanks, Julie. We just got a question come in. Julie, do you have an example of what caregiving benefits might look like? Eligibility, how much, and how you distribute that?
That is not my area of expertise, but I think that that really looking at other samples out there and other resources that you may have for those kind of needs, and I think it's kind of moving away from the, you know, I know there's family medical leave, but only certain size companies need to abide by that or offer that. But the HR folks out there know much better than I do, but really being creative about what they offer and how they offer it. But I don't have any specific resources for you, sorry. But thank you for thinking about it. And like I said, it's not just childcare, it's, you know, for families that are caring for other people in their households, not just young children too.
Right. Thanks, Julie. Tammy, a question came in for you as well. I don't know if you see this one, but it said, how is World Relief working to support the children of refugee families? We know that it's always a concern for women, other women coming through your system that have specific skills that we can create support for in our local communities.
Great questions. We are just really starting to learn. We've just welcomed our first families starting a month ago. So again, doing all those preliminary requirements first. We have a very large Afghan community in Sacramento, and our Sacramento office works there. So we've had a lot of talks with them regarding how we can support the women, because again, coming from the culture, their culture norm is that women don't work. So we're concerned about how do we uplift and support them if they're able not to work. We don't know if that's going to be true given the financials. So looking at possibly having some times and some places where the women can get together, but we know we need female interpreters for that. We know we need childcare for that. There's a lot of pieces that have to come together to be able to do that, but that's what we're thinking first. We're also we've also enrolled actually some of the first arrivals in Appleton's Even Start program, and that's a collaborative effort between Fox Valley Technical College and Appleton School District for mothers with children under 5. And some of our previous Afghan community members have gone through that, and it's been an excellent experience for the moms to learn English and to become, you know, culturally immersed in our culture also. We don't want to take their culture away from them, but have to find that balance of what works, you know, in the space you're living and what, you know, what you keep on your own and how you can navigate those two. So anyway, that's been a great experience. So we've already enrolled several of our families with small children in that program, the Even Start program. So we'll continue. Like I said, learn, pivot is the place we're at right now. But yeah, looking forward to lifting the women up in the community.
All right, I got a couple more questions coming in, but before I get to those, I do have a question for Bill. I know we'd spoke before we jumped on here, and you got a lot of stuff you're trying to cover, right, in 20 minutes. I think you'd expressed some interest in if any of the people on the call today would be interested in getting together with you maybe afterwards to do some kind of a roundtable discussion about these incentive plans and how to best put them to use. I don't know if you want to kind of explain what you were thinking and how people can get in touch with you about that.
It's real simple, and Eric, thanks for posing that. Incentive plans inevitably are very company specific. So I tried to provide, you know, a background that would be useful in general. But if anyone on the any of the Fox member folks would like to have a conversation about your specific circumstance, having worked with about 400 different companies over the last 30 years, I've got a fair amount of experience. So I'd be more than happy to do that. No sales pitch, no cost. But I think some of the things that the Fox Cities Chamber is doing is great, as I've told you, Eric. And I'm more than happy to contribute.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And again, for everyone who's on, I'll be sending out contact info for everyone, and you can definitely post questions to me as well if that's easier. And I'll make sure they get back to the panelists, and we'll try to follow up with everything. I do have another question. I think we got a little more time here. Tammy, Bobby is writing if she's curious if Afghan women would be willing to work from home, maybe doing some kind of handwork or something that can be done from home to help transition into the thought of working.
They might. That's a very good, question. And again, one that we can explore. We just, we're taking a lot, like I said, a lot of advice and insight from our Sacramento office, and that hasn't come up, but it doesn't mean that it's something that we wouldn't consider. So yeah, thank you for that though. We'll have to think about that. Yeah, they do. I will add one point to that is I'm on calls with Fort McCoy. Also, they're housing about 12,000 evacuees right now. And in a recent call, they said they purchased, I think, like 10 sewing machines, just as, for people just to, creative outlet and that type of thing. And it sounded like more men than women were using the sewing machines, and they were definitely utilized almost 24 hours a day. So I think that's something that maybe we shouldn't assume that it would only be the women, but maybe men would be interested in that type of profession, some type of sewing profession. So yeah, just whatever.
Great. Julie, we got another question with you for you on caregiving. It says, with a very tight hiring market, what might be ways of making caregiving work of interest to others? And in your opinion, what would interest men and women into helping this profession?
That's a big one. I alluded to a little bit about kind of the childcare system being broken, and one of the ways it's broken is the wages that childcare workers earn. A lot of these, and they're mainly women, and it would be great to have more men in this early childcare field. Women with associate's degrees are getting paid $12 an hour, or it's probably higher now given we've seen an increase in all the wages. But you go move on to a kindergarten teacher and you're in that system and your wages are doubled, tripled. It's just very different. And you're caring for kids that are a couple of years older. So I think wages. I think the flexibility offered to childcare workers. It's a hard business model. And if you look at a lot of women-owned childcare centers, and it's a really hard business model, there's a lot of regulations, which are good things, but it's very hard to kind of get into that model and be able to make it work, which is why, unfortunately, if you need your child in childcare, you're paying 5 days a week, every day, whether you need it or not. It's hard to get part-time care. It's hard to be flexible in childcare because you need to make the numbers work as a business. I think pay, really, it comes down to pay, because if you have somebody with an associate's degree making barely above minimum wage and they're caring for our children like that is just not sustainable. And you may get those people, but you'll get them for a short time, and then they'll move on to something else. So I think the pay is a big thing to look at, and benefits. Do childcare workers get benefits and retirement and all the things that we come to rely on for our employer. So. Sure.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of leads me to the next question I had for Bill when you're talking about different benefits. I know your presentation kind of focused around the bonuses as far as cash bonuses. Have you done any research on other types of incentives like perks or different unique things that people are doing? And maybe what are some of the more unique things you've heard people trying?
Yeah, so it's, again, you work with 400 companies, you see a lot of different things. And I'd say on the very far extreme, the folks that move into employee ownership, through an ESOP or something like that, that's like this on steroids. I've seen a lot of simple things too, though. And that is, usually there's already a team incentive in place. I'm influencing them, so that's likely going to be the case. I'll give you a really good example. Levy Construction is a group that they pour concrete. I mean, you're kind of talking down and dirty, okay? And I love them all, okay? About 40 people. And so they had an overall incentive plan, but Terry had a weekly meeting where they review how the last week went. It only went about 25 minutes, and then they talk about the next week. It was Monday morning, 7 a.m. Terry was having a hard time getting his folks to like speak up and be engaged. And you can imagine folks that pour concrete at 7 a.m. on a Monday. I mean, it's a kind of a lot to ask for a lot of engagement. The only thing I don't like about this idea was it wasn't mine. I mean, it was freaking brilliant. Here's what he did. He said, okay, what I want to do is I'm going to give $10 to each of two parties. The first party is the individual that recognizes something great that somebody did last week. And the other $10 is going to the individual that actually did something great. You wouldn't believe how these guys started speaking up. Okay. And frankly, $10, Julie, to your comment about caregivers, $10 wasn't something they not pick up, but it wasn't that much for them. Okay. But the notion of recognizing others, I'd even do in our own company, I own over time, I not only coach, but I've invested in a few companies. One of them is a remodeling company. The details are not that important. But one of the things that happened, because again, everybody now knows, again, team incentive, they're all focused on driving, in that case, gross margin dollars. So one of our guys, this was midst of the pandemic, and we're hurt because we've got a lot of units, a lot of customers are shut down. I mean, they don't want us at their homes. So Pedro was at one of the homes, and so he's remodeling 3 bathrooms, he and the crew. Well, he noticed that the customer had 2 other bathrooms that we were not remodeling. And so Pedro says, you know, aren't you pretty happy with the remodeling that we did on these 3? And the customer says, yeah, it's delightful. I'm saying, you guys are fast, it's clean, it's a big, I just love it. And he says, well, you know, I think we could take care of these other 2. Like, sort of no problem. The customer says, really? He says, yeah. Pedro is in operations. Suddenly he's in sales. Okay. He lands the 2 jobs. We admittedly, the purchasing folks turn things around really well to get some products so we could get the jobs done and so forth. But it's a perk, if you will, is all of a sudden we decided Pedro was an unofficial member of the sales team. You would not, I mean, and we do just like we're looking at right here, when we have our weekly meeting, only it's more folks because, you know, we got more people, but we got everybody up on a screen. You should have looked at Pedro's face. And so part of what I would say is if you get some really great behavior, recognize it. And sometimes you can recognize it financially with, you know, some perk or something. But frankly, in the case of Pedro, we didn't give him any extra money. And I think I don't know what the recognition was worth to him, but it was more than $10, buddy. I can tell you that for sure. So the point that I want to make is oftentimes people effectively, well-intended, but they trivialize compensation with little perks or trivia and that kind of stuff, and it's well-intended, okay? When it's in the context of improving the entire company, and now you're recognizing folks, it would be very big. And then whoever that individual was that posed that question, again, there's always specific details to a particular company's circumstance. So if they would be interested in kind of getting into the specifics of their company's circumstance and do a little dreaming about what might be beneficial for them, happy to do that. Hope a couple examples were useful.
Great. Thanks, Bill. I've got one more question for Tammy, and then I think we're gonna have to wrap up here. But Tammy, if there's any people on that are, employers or HR people that are thinking, hey, we might want to look into see what kind of skills these refugees are bringing in, what is the best way for them to get involved or possibly reach out and see what opportunities are there? Oh, you're on mute.
Muted. Yeah. Tammy, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Reach out to me. We're seeking to hire an employment specialist. So I'm stepping in right now. So yeah, and we can have a conversation if you contact me and just let me know that you're interested. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you guys all so much for being on and helping us today. I think you all have some great insight on what's going on out there, and hopefully our participants who are on the call today, feel free to reach out and touch base individually with you guys too with any questions or opportunities you may have. So as I said, I will be sharing that. We have the email list from everybody. We'll share everybody's presentation as well as contact info, so we can get in touch directly. But really, again, thanks to everybody. Really appreciate your time this morning, and we'll even give you back 4 minutes today. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You bet. Bye now.
Yeah.